goes. So thank you so much for coming back. This is the third presentation here tonight in the 2020 Senior Project Presentations Quarantine Edition. Let's hear the third one. This is really exciting. So put your hands together out there in the listening audience and here in school for Willa Roth Homage.
Good evening. Thank you all for being here. It means a lot to me. My name is Willa Roth, and this year I became a firefighter. I never thought I would be a firefighter. My whole life I remember regarding firefighters with a distant sort of awe. They were these almost mythical beings that just appeared whenever anything caught fire. I never really thought about them as human beings with complex existences or about the people that loved them, waiting for them to come home. They were there when you needed them, and then they just disappeared. I never thought I would be one of them. I always thought I might work in a job of service, perhaps teacher, therapist, caregiver of some type. I love working for people. Service is something that I've always felt very strongly about, but I didn't think that would mean working in the emergency services. In my junior year of high school, a student from my school joined Veroca's volunteer fire department. It was through him that I was introduced to the world of volunteer fire service. Before knowing him, I had never realized that the average citizen could become a firefighter. I became fascinated with the job as I watched him go through training and grow immensely as a person. I began to meet some firefighters on Veroca's department and was struck by their kindness and their crassness. But they were just normal people. Normal people that worked insanely hard, yes, but they were strikingly average. Stephen works night shift at the Northside Quick Trip. Todd raises alpacas and owns a yarn store in town. Brendan is the emergency management director of the county. Glenn works at a car dealership. Ryan is an athletic trainer at the local hospital. Eric is a landscaper. Tim is a dairy farmer. They're all just members of the community, people you could bump into at the store. It was easy to think about fitting in with them once I realized how human they were and took them off the pedestal in my mind. When first thinking about what my senior project might be, I always figured that I would do some form of art. Art is something that I really enjoy a lot, and it's a pretty safe choice for me. But it wasn't really what I wanted to do. It always felt just too self-centered. If I was going to be spending the better part of a year on a project, I didn't want it to just have a service aspect. I wanted the project itself to be of service. I wanted to do something to give back to my community. Just had a hard time figuring out what that would be. I couldn't think of how I could do that in a way that was really interesting to me until I discovered firefighting. In a very short time, I knew that working with the fire department was something that I really felt passionate about putting my time into for the next 7 months or so. And it's a good thing that I was passionate about it, because I really put my time in. In your first year of Veroca's volunteer fire department, you're expected to take 3 fire service professional development courses offered through Western Technical College. It's about 82 hours of class time, as well as 8 hours of online classes through the Federal Emergency Management Agency. So that's 90 hours. And read the most current edition of the National Fire Protection Agency Improved Fundamental of Firefighter Skills textbook. I don't know how many hours that is. Textbooks are dry and boring. In addition, you're expected to attend 75% of weekly meetings, apparatus maintenance nights, and drills at the fire department. During the height of my entry-level training, I was doing about 15 hours of work a week with the fire department on top of my regular school days and homework. I definitely underestimated how much work the initial training was going to be. I'd be lying if I said it wasn't one of the most challenging things I've ever done. That said, I really enjoyed my entry-level training. I ended up in a class of 10 with students from 5 different departments: Veroca, Coon Valley, Viola, Reedstown, and Ontario. And our instructor was the chief of Sodder Fire Department, Chief Joe Paff, perhaps the greatest instructor ever. He was the kind of instructor who pushed you to do your very best and didn't take no for an answer, but at the same time really genuinely cared about the students and never pushed you to do something that you weren't capable of. He He's extremely knowledgeable, and I trust my training because of him. He also brought in chiefs and instructors from several other departments, which is something that I appreciated a lot and think is a wonderful asset for new firefighters. I really love the cross-departmental aspect of training. Having connections to other departments is profoundly valuable, and the compilation of knowledge of the chiefs from your neighboring fire districts is a wonderful resource. Being able to draw on the experience and wisdom of leaders of so many different departments is invaluable. A little multi-departmental class grew into a little family of sorts, inside jokes and all. They were an incredible amount of fun to work with, and just a really excellent group of people. I trust them to have my back in anything, and would be honored to work with any of their departments in the future. Something that grew out of this whole venture that came as a great surprise to me was a really strong appreciation for community, both as a concept and as a thing that I'm actively part of and surrounded by. I've never been a person who felt a really strong sense of community, even in a place like Baroka, Wisconsin, that really values community. I really appreciated the people here and felt the immense kindness of the community, but I never really identified with it. It was lovely, but it wasn't me. I feel very differently since becoming a part of the fire department. It has given me a whole new love for our town and the people in it. It's a crazy amount of responsibility I've been given, and sometimes it just kind of blows my mind that I'm even allowed to do this. It feels like such an honor and a privilege to be entrusted with the safety of so many lives. If you do the math, the number of active members of the Baroka Fire Department divided by the population of Baroka, I'm responsible for the lives of approximately 135 people. That's a lot of responsibility, especially for someone who's only 18. Sometimes it scares me a little. Not because I'm not confident in my abilities. I really believe in myself, and I try my very, very best. It's just a lot of responsibility. But I'm far from alone. And that's something that I dearly love about the fire service. It's a community of its own. It's an incredibly proud and supportive network of people, and we all have each other's backs. Our department has such a strong feeling of kinship about it. I feel very strongly about protecting them and the things they love. I think perhaps that could be the nature of the occupation. Near-death experiences bring people together. So it just kind of follows that if you work in a job where your coworkers are constantly entrusted with your life safety and you with theirs, that you would become close. We're like a family. If there's never an apocalypse, I know who I want to be with. Now the elephant in the room. I'm a woman. That is, of course. In my experience, that's kind of a focus point when I tell people that I'm a firefighter. Whether that means that they're congratulating me on my female power and representation or trying to figure out whether the correct term for me is firewoman. I honestly went into the whole thing patting myself on the back a little because it's true, not a lot of women are in the fire service. But honestly, at this point, I have very different feelings about gender in the fire service. I definitely think there's value in having both men and women in the emergency services, but I don't think gender is a significant factor in overall performance. Because it's not about whether you're tall or ripped, or the best at A, B, or C. It's about the team. It's about a group of individuals with diverse skill sets and strengths that all make up one hell of a capable, devoting team of badasses. I think women can add a really lovely level of sensitivity, and in my experience, they are often very good with communication, which is a vital skill. Those qualities can also be found in men. I know men in the fire service with those qualities. So at the end of the day, I believe it's really just about plain old, good, devoted people, regardless of their sex or identity. That is not to say that I'm not proud to be a woman in the fire service, because I very much am. I'm not proud, though, because I think I'm extraordinary or exemplary in some sort of way. I'm proud because of the role model I get to be. I want little girls to see me in my turnouts and get excited to see someone that they can relate to taking care of the community. I want to represent. I remember as a child being very excited seeing women operating an excavator or driving a semi or a truck. It was just so thrilling to me to see women doing typically masculine things. Perhaps some girls are just not interested in more masculine things, but I believe that there are plenty of women and girls out there who don't even consider that something like firefighting is an option for them simply because it is and has always been a very male-dominated field. I was raised very progressively. My parents never discouraged me from pursuing any career or interest, so it wasn't like I ever felt held back. But I still wish I had more example of women doing men's jobs. I guess I'm just trying to be a badass female role model that I looked for as a kid. Something I was sure that was going to be a struggle in the whole venture was the political differences between me and the rest of the fire department. By my calculations, 83% of the department is made up of white Republican males. I definitely thought that was going to be an issue. I'm usually very vocal about my political and ethical beliefs, and I'm not scared to have a conversation with someone that I don't agree with. But that was going to be a tough uphill battle at the fire station. I was scared that people were going to say things that I just wouldn't feel okay with not speaking up about. And I'd say something and have to be in a disagreement with someone that I was working side by side with. No such thing happened. I'm now realizing how ridiculous it was for me to be worried about it. Firefighting isn't political. Yes, it is true. I don't agree with a lot of my fellow firefighters' political standpoints. No, it isn't a problem. Tragedy doesn't care who you voted for or how you feel about taxes. In the end, we all have very basic things in common. We are just humans who want to be safe and loved. I know that sounds very cliche, but I say that in great seriousness. There is no reason for politics to matter in the fire service, because when you're trapped in a crushed car, or you're watching your home or the home of someone you love burning, that kind of thing just doesn't matter. Your political or worldviews don't impact how capable of a firefighter you are. Lots of people made a very big deal about me working with people that I don't share political views with. I think they were concerned that I wouldn't be treated respectfully, or that I might be changed by working with people who have different beliefs than me. I'm not going to lie, there's a lot of hazing at the fire department, but it's truly all in good fun. It's never been related to politics, and it stops the moment a call comes in. Everyone takes their job very seriously, and I'm treated very respectfully, regardless of my political opinions. I think it's really unfortunate that I was viewed as such an
Sorry, I'm in this photo.
as such an unorthodox thing for me to join the fire department. People were surprised that I was joining as a woman, but much more than that, they were surprised that I was joining as a hippie, or from that side of town. That to me points to how sadly separated and polarized our town truly is. I think it's a really lovely community here, but that does not mean it's not divided. Our town is very strongly split by Main Street. On the west side, people send their children to public schools and shop at Walmart and Quillen's, and generally have a conservative political alliance. They are the people who have lived here and raised their children here for generations. On the east side are the newcomers, the transplants from the cities mostly. Moved here to send their children to the Waldorf grade school or alternative high schools. They shop at the organic food co-op and vote liberal. I've always been a part of the latter group. So much so that as a kid, I didn't even understand that the majority of people who lived in this town weren't part of the hippie middle class bubble that I lived in. The polarity became most noticeable to me when I started high school. There has always been such scorn between my high school and the public high school. Our whole relationship with them is filled with competition and stereotypes, each firmly believing that they are the superior form of education and the other is deeply inferior. I fully bought into it and spent a lot of time with a pretty high and mighty attitude of the school I went to and the people I was around. It's very embarrassing and honestly sad for me to think about now. It's such an ignorant and arrogant mindset to have. There's no reason why you can't have different political views and still work side by side with someone very easily. It's just about finding common ground. Humans are humans. I have plenty of friends and colleagues that I appreciate and respect without having to have the same political views. I think political polarity is a huge issue in our society at this time, and it really weighs on my heart. The polarity created by having different political viewpoints doesn't have to and shouldn't extend into everyday life and human interaction. All it does is create unnecessary conflict in a society that can't afford any more dissonance or disagreement. We all have fundamental goals of health, happiness, and prosperity. We just have different ideas of how to achieve those things. This experience has really helped me understand the values of connecting with people who think, vote, and live differently than you. We all have things in common if we are willing to look past our political dissimilarities. We could live in a much happier, more peaceful world if we tried to meet each other looking for our similarities and not our differences. Becoming a firefighter has really greatly impacted my life and completely changed how I think and move about the world. It's very strange to think about how one thing can change your life so much. Now it's always the first thing I have to think about. In a sense, I never relax, even when I'm relaxed. My pager, wallet, keys, and phone, if they aren't on my person, they're within arm's reach, even if I'm asleep. I can't just kick my shoes off somewhere in the house. I have to know where they are at all times. If I do take them off, they're always in my path to the door so I can step into them as I'm running out. I park my car facing the way I'm going to respond. I sleep in my socks and a t-shirt with my pants and boots waiting next to the bed. I sit on the end of the aisle when I go to a movie or performance. I don't walk anywhere that's not within sprinting distance of my car. I set a full change of clothes next to me on the sink when I'm taking a shower. All in all, I'm a pretty laid-back person, though. That might sound a bit laughable next to what I just said, but honestly, it's the case. A lot of people assume that those things mean I feel a lot of anxiety about being on call, but I'm not on edge, I'm just prepared. I actually feel more uncomfortable when I'm not on call because all of those things have become habit to me and feel very unnatural not to do. I am, however, somewhat hypersensitive to sounds at this point. Everyone in the department carries a pager, and when a call comes in, our pagers transmit a department-specific two-note tones that serves as a sort of identification code so that we know the page is for our department. The tones are then followed by the pager actually going off and emitting a high-frequency beeping, followed by the pager giving us information from the dispatcher regarding the location and nature of the call. Unfortunately, I've learned that there are everyday things that make eerily similar sounds, and it's a very uncomfortable experience. Specifically, there's a machine at Culver's that makes the exact beeping sound of the pager, and I have to say it makes lunch less enjoyable. I hear the sound and all of my muscles just tense up and my heart rate goes up before I can even have any kind of logical thought process. I've even had the misfortune of finding a wind chime that sounds just like the beginning of Rope Fire's tones. It's just a visceral response that my body has adopted. I don't actually have control over it. That said, it doesn't really bother me. It's actually a very helpful response for when the pager is actually going off. My mom says it sounds like motherhood to her. She describes having a similar experience in response to hearing her children cry or call out for her in the very specific way that they did when they were hurt. I find the parallel between those things a little odd and perhaps slightly concerning, but also very interesting. Both are examples of the body having learned to recognize something as having absolute importance in your life, and I find that fascinating. Becoming part of the fire department has been such a defining experience in my life. It's not exactly what I expected, and it's most certainly not what people think it is. I don't run heroically into buildings and save people's pets and children. More than 3/4 of calls are false alarms or something minor, where I just end up waiting outside on standby. It's not like in the movies. There's nothing glamorous about it. I once spent a whole morning shoveling the congealed blood of a dead Amish horse off of a highway. No one ever mentioned that was part of the job. Welcome to the emergency services. It's scary, and it's unexpected, and it's hard. But when I get to see my school's boarding house standing there still, albeit slightly singed, I remember how proud I am to be a part of my department, and what an honor it is to be serving this community that I love so dearly. To everyone in the emergency services who gives their midnights, their Sunday afternoons, their holidays, and their time with family, without a second thought, to help keep this town safe, thank you. I'm proud to be able to call myself one of you.
All right, let's go to the chat. Yeah, Willa, you are I'm not going to say that out loud. You said it. A badass female role model, badass. Great words of wisdom. So proud of you. How about some questions? Do you have questions for Willa? How many fires have you run on so far? Run on? That's like real
She's
technical.
wondering how many calls I've run.
How many calls have you run?
Oh,
Yes.
I don't know the answer to that. As far as like the number of structure fires that our department gets, it's actually really sadly small. Not sadly. Okay, but we train for that the very most, and when you don't get to do it very often, it feels a little sad. But last year there were a total of 11 structure fires, and about half of those were ours, and the rest of them were us going to aid other fire departments surrounding us. So not that many structure fires.
What does your career look like?
Oh no. Terrible question. Whoever asked that, oh my god. Way to put me on the spot.
Great question. Good job.
I'm not sure. I don't know that I would pursue this as a career per se. I'm not certain that I would become a professional firefighter because I like doing this also in like the framework of doing this specifically for this town, and that's a really large part of why I feel so strongly about it. It would be something that I would consider. I would also consider going into law enforcement, but I don't know.
We have time for a couple more questions. Just put them in your chat. Chat them up. Oh wait, hold on. Tell us about gear.
Oh boy.
Is volunteer? What was the hardest part of the training?
Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy.
What does the
oh
physical
boy.
training? What does the physical training look like? What's been your most frightening experience so far? Okay, the questions are rolling in. Take any one of those questions.
Okay. Yes, Vertigo Fire Department is volunteer. The only person that gets paid for full-time work there is the chief. And some departments are kind of like part volunteer, which means that they pay a couple of firefighters to be there all the time, and the rest of them they pay a lot smaller, and they're volunteer so that they like respond to the station instead of like working hours there.
What's the physical training or the training?
What is the? It's all
Like,
it's all physical training.
What was the most difficult part of the physical training?
The ladder training is really hard. I am kind of scared of heights, less so than I thought, because I met people in my training class that were like legitimately scared of heights, and I was like, oh, I'm not actually that scared of heights, because that person is really scared of heights. But definitely, I haven't had to do the hardest part of ladder training yet, but climbing up a ladder, carrying a ladder, and putting the ladder on the roof, and then climbing up the ladder that's like sloping up the roof, and then climbing back down the ladder, and then like stepping over on the ladder, like all while you're like 2 stories up, is very scary. It's very scary. I'm definitely gonna decline to do roof operations when I go to structure fires.
Miranda says, "Good Lord." Do you have any plans for the near future?
Graduate high school?
Yeah.